Director Radcliffe,
Here.
Director Royson, Director Baker, Director Claymeyer.
Here.
Director Terry Johnson, Director Rob Blaisdell.
And we have do have Director Dodge on. I can see her. Good morning.
And I know we couldn't hear, okay, Commissioner, we can, hopefully hear, and so we see you on the screen and we'll count you towards quorum as well as Alicia Bruce, I see you as well.
Okay, and we have quorum. Thank you very much. So this meeting is set up just a little bit differently than most of our typical meetings. Excuse me, that back on. This meeting is set up a little different than most of our typical meetings. That's because September is full of many key observances in line with the Foundation Commission. We'd like to take a moment to recognize that. Through this, we're going to work together to handle our typical One Ohio business. So after the formal agenda, we'd like to connect all the people in chairs and exit panels who have joined us across the state connect to honor the work we plan to do together to support behavioral health needs in Ohio. And can I ask our regional leadership and expert panel members to stand up, please? Thank you for all of you making the trip and being with us today. And I know many more have joined us virtually. Thank you to them as well. So this month is also National Recovery Month. So time is set aside to honor the millions of Americans living in recovery so they can celebrate with their friends, their families, and their communities to support them. Since its establishment in 1989, National Recovery Month has been dedicated to celebrating new treatments, recognizing the millions of lives transformed by recovery, and applauding those programs and people who make recovery possible. Taken together, these impacts affirm our faith that even the most challenging approach to recovery is possible. Also, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. This week is also Black Suicide Prevention Month, and finally today is the World Suicide Prevention Month. And you know, personally, I've lost friends through suicide, so these are very important, I'll call them proclamations, dedications for us to set aside. So this is in fact a time to raise awareness, promote hope, and normalize health seeking. Suicide affects millions of people every year, yet too many struggle in silence. This month is dedicated to recognizing the warning signs for suicide, encouraging open conversations about mental health, connecting people to proven treatment and resources. If you haven't already, please check out the resources made available on the state's Recovery Ohio initiative, and are made available at the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services website. So if you like to learn more,
Progress.
have a motion to approve those minutes.
I move approval of the minutes. Tyler Lee.
Don Tyler Lee makes the motion,
Kidd second.
second by Larry Kidd. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, and the motion carries. Our mission moment. Next, I'd like to turn over the floor to Daphne Ayers to introduce our special guests for today's meeting. And it's going to be China Darlington and Stephanie Robinson, but go ahead, please.
Yes, definitely.
Word, Steph.
Thank you, Don. In light of our continued goal to highlight stories of people who have been impacted by addiction and to celebrate Recovery Month, I'm honored to introduce not one, but two Mission Moment speakers today. It's my pleasure to introduce both China Darlington and Stephanie Robinson to speak. They both have personal stories to share with you and lead organizations that are One Ohio Recovery Foundation grantees. Before I turn it over to China and then Stephanie, thank you both for your willingness to share your stories and the important work that both of your organizations do in the community. We are inspired by you and celebrate you and your recovery this month and all year long.
Kind of going in. Yeah, I can hear you better. All right. Hello, everyone.
Morning.
I'm China Darlington. I'm a person in long-term sustained recovery from opiate and other addictions. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey to recovery and what we've done since, and most importantly, what we are doing with our One Ohio funds that our organization has received. So if I can take you back to 2003, I am a 32-year-old mother who is pregnant at the tail end of 16 years of opioid addiction. And I had lost hope that I was ever going to be able to change from that. It was almost like I had made my bed, now I have to lie in it. It was very internally stigmatized. I was ashamed of what I had become. The whole thing, you've heard this over and over again. When I found out that I was pregnant again, I was offered the opportunity to engage in treatment services. And it was the first time that I was engaged. I'd gone to treatment 7 or 8 times at that point. It was the first time that I went to a women's treatment center that was trauma informed. And they asked me a question. They said, "Why do you use?" And I said, "Heroin and cocaine." Because that question was always, what do you use? And let's treat the symptoms of that. And the why, I remember going, well, it's been 16 years. I think I forgot why. You know, it worked in the beginning, but now I'm just in this drudgery that I can't get out of, this hole that I can't climb out of. They treated my trauma, took a long time, and I regained my confidence and my internal wherewithal to connect other people on a recovery journey that could hopefully be shorter and smoother than mine was, that they could access recovery faster. It didn't have to take 16 years in a second crisis pregnancy and involvement in the justice system and the child welfare system, that somebody could notice that they had a problem, maybe in the mild and moderate areas, and get help then, so they don't have to destroy their lives. Once my personal recovery was on solid ground, I had a few years. I remember thinking, why, number one, do people have to get so bad before they really get access to really good quality, long-term treatment options, recovery supports, housing, because those were all key components in me stabilizing and coming back together as a strong family unit. I started getting involved in recovery support services. In 2007, I became trained as a peer supporter and then as a recovery coach. I came back to Ohio where peer work was not very recognized at that moment. I started knocking on doors that helped me, saying, "Hey, can I talk to your people? I want to share some hope with them. I want to connect them with some services and resources that might help them stabilize faster." And every now and again, an organization would say yes, and they started to see how effective recovery supports were, how effective peer was. It was magic. And so more and more people in Ohio and in my Northeastern Ohio region started supporting peer work. I became kind of a subject matter expert on peer work and how to do it and how to support the peer workers so we don't drain them dry and they leave the field. And we keep their talent and skills. I worked for 15 years in a variety of behavioral health units, everything from residential psych units, substance use units. We put peers in the emergency department in one of our hospitals the first time. I went to recovery houses, treatment centers, any place that my people were at. And it started to, we started to build a movement. After 15 years of doing this for other organizations, I had discerned what worked really well and where we still needed improvements. And I started putting seeds out into my community that I would like to create a recovery community organization that could work with people who were contemplating change, starting to make change, engaging in change, maintaining that change, and sustaining that change and giving help to other people. The organization that I formed with another person in long-term recovery is called the Summit Recovery Hub. And we incorporated as a 501c3 a little over 3 years ago. So we're a very new organization. But what we do that's different is we have a low barrier front door. We don't care if you have insurance. We don't care if you're still struggling. If you want to connect with help, we're going to be there for you. And we've built an incredible team. We have 6 of the most competent peer workers in the state. I feel I might be a little biased, but they are all very knowledgeable and experienced of the resources we have in Northeastern Ohio and connect people very expeditiously. We can give family support on how to best support their loved one who's at whatever stage of engaging in the recovery process or in the active addiction process. We have become a trusted resource in our community. And last year, in round 1 of the opioid settlement dollars being distributed by One Ohio, me and my big idea, I put together a proposal. And I said, one of the things that I see as a barrier is, well, first of all, the first thing I saw as a barrier is we had a little unit that we started our RCO out of. It was 1,200 square feet. We were regularly packing over 100 people into it. And I was terrified that the fire marshal was going to come and do a surprise inspection because we had people stacked on top of each other and sitting on display counters. So ended up being 2 units that were at the end of our building. And I said, maybe we could expand into that. Also, transportation was a problem, right? People wanted to engage in the services that maybe they accessed, but couldn't continue the care because they had a transportation barrier. So we said, we're going to start a low barrier transportation, recovery supportive transportation program, and it's called Summit Rides. And on October 9th of last year, in the first announcement of One Ohio Awards, we were awarded one of those grants. And we bought a car, and we hired some drivers, and we trained some people, and we've been given rides. We received our dollars, I want to say, in early November, and by January, we were up and running. And thanks to one of the other directors here, Mr. St. John, who had started a transportation program in his area. We learned a lot of what works and what doesn't from him. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And as I close, I'm going to give you just some statistics of what we've been able to achieve since November of last year with those One Ohio funds. We've distributed over 10,000 doses of naloxone and other life-saving harm reduction supplies into Ohio. We've conducted 6,800 individual services and recovery supports to people. We've connected 325 individuals to treatment services. We've doubled our staff from 3 to 6. We've expanded our hours so that we're now open 7 days a week and into the evening to at least 7 or 9 p.m. We have holiday events, so no one has to be alone on the holidays. We've doubled our size. We opened our annex. We can have 3 concurrent meetings, groups, or activities, and we have space for over 100 people to gather at one time. We have 848 unique individuals that we've served, and 320 of those engage in ongoing one-on-one services with those 6 staff members. We developed recovery life skills training classes, seeking safety, financial wellness specifically designed for people in recovery. And we have our Summit Rides program. We now have 2 vehicles. We've driven over 13,000 miles. We've tallied up 937 days of rides, and we average about 12 to 15 rides a day. And we're not done. So I just want to thank you and really hope that you realize the impact that these dollars are having in our communities. We have become a trusted resource. We've taken over 9,000 calls and spent like 137 hours on the phone with people. They call every day of the week, every time of the day. And our metric is that 85% of the time that phone is answered by a human being, get a phone tree. So we really believe in the power of recovery supports, and I really want to thank you for investing in those. Happy Recovery Month.
Thank you, China. That was amazing. Love the power of recovery. It's exceptional. My name is Stephanie Robinson, and I am the founding executive director of Hope Recovery Community. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. So for me, that means I haven't used drugs, alcohol, or engaged in eating disorder behaviors for over 17 years. Yeah, you can clap. Yeah, we can. I know recovery is very important, right? Right? It wasn't always like that, though. When I was a little child, when I grew up, I wanted to be a vet. Right? I didn't want to have a problem with drugs and alcohol. I didn't want to have mental health conditions. I didn't think I was going to grow up and be in recovery. I don't know anybody who thought they were going to grow up and be an executive director of a nonprofit. Wasn't part of career day at my school. Should be. We're going to change that. Those weren't really things that I thought were for me. You see, I was from middle class America. I was from Medina County. I had every privilege in the world, access to anything I needed. I was driven. I was a type A personality. I was a perfectionist, Division I college athlete. The perfect storm for greatness, the perfect storm for a substance use disorder. And so by the time I found substances in middle school, which is a pretty normal age of onset, and then deepened that love with substances in high school and really became passionate about them in college, threw away a full ride to Bowling Green State University. Because drugs and alcohol made me feel what I wanted to feel and not feel what I didn't want to feel. They made me feel normal in a very complicated world. And it really became a self-medication. And I didn't realize that my brain and my genetics and the environment was going to create this dependence, that in my brain, I was going to respond differently than the rest of the population. So I moved to Colorado, where I got even more excited about substances. And then found myself deep in addiction. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I had tried outpatient. And as the perfectionist I lied my way through that treatment because we get really good at that. And then my eating disorder is really what got the best of me when I was 28 years old. A battle with anorexia landed me in treatment and in residential. I had the privilege to have private health care. I had the privilege to have a family that could support me. I had the privilege to have a college degree. And so my treatment path was very unique compared to those I see today. And so I found recovery 17 years ago at that treatment center because I found a higher power of my understanding. And I didn't plan on never drinking alcohol again. Even today, that seems very wild to me, but I just started living my life next right thing one day at a time. And I came home and I got better. And I realized that my job, 6-figure job in corporate America, was no longer going to be a healthy part of my recovery journey. And so I remember the last raise I had gotten before I went to treatment was a $30,000 raise. And then I went to work for a church and my first raise was a quarter. But the profound joy and happiness and color and life and power I found in recovery, there was no value I could put on that. And then I started to talk. If you know me, I talk a lot. And then people started to pay me to come speak in their high schools. So I spoke over 5 years to about 100,000 teenagers, talking about drugs, sex, and rock and roll, right? To the perfect crowd who knows everything, hates the world, and doesn't want to be there. I love youth. And then I got asked to speak in my own community about a drug levy at the time. And so I spoke and somebody took notice and somebody created opportunity because I believe that recovery equals willingness plus opportunity. When a person is willing to seek help, when a person is willing to lead, when a person is willing to sit on an expert panel, like we have to create that opportunity with lived experience. And so then I started to look around my own community and saw like, wait, like all of my friends are dying. There aren't options. It's seeking help shouldn't be harmful. Seeking help shouldn't be harmful. And yet still at the local, state, and federal level, navigating help is incredibly challenging and can be incredibly harmful. And so I was like, well, somebody else will take care of that. They'll do something about that. I don't know who they is, but higher power was like, oh, no. You are the they. And so I started to learn about recovery community organizations. And then I got all my friends in the recovery community together and we're like, let's start a nonprofit. That sounds like fun. Little did we know, and it was a gift, how hard that was going to be, because you probably wouldn't do it had you known. But we just did the next right thing one day at a time. And so we formed Hope Recovery Community. It started with these little Saturday dinners that now serve up to 150 people every Saturday night when we break bread together. And then we opened our first recovery center 7 years ago. And then we opened 2 more recovery centers. And then we got peers into our jails. Then we got peers into child welfare, because I believe in a peer army. I believe in the power of lived experience. I love prevention and I love treatment and I love degrees on a wall, but I love lived experience alongside of all those things. And then we decided that we were going to get into recovery housing. So today we have a recovery center that sees about 72 people per day. We have 43 recovery housing beds, thanks to One Ohio. 3 of those are female, 40 are male. The One Ohio grant funds allowed us just 2 months ago to open our first women's level 1 recovery house to show women we care about them and their long-term recovery. 3 is not enough. It was filled immediately. And then a couple years ago, I had the idea that we were going to try a recovery farm, because we believe in innovation. We believe in out-of-the-box thinking to address an issue that continues to have mid-level numbers and outcomes and successes, right? We've got to try new things. So today, in partnership with our ADAM board, with the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and with our Parks District, we run a 17-acre farm. 12 men live on that farm. Last year, those men in recovery produced over 4,000 pounds of produce that was donated to our local communities. Can you imagine empowering people in recovery to combat local food insecurities? It's unbelievable. The power of recovery is so valuable, and we are so grateful that you've invested in us, so much so that I got to land on the expert panel, which was terrifying. Thanks for that. I didn't have all those letters next to my name. They're so smart and they're so experienced and they're so amazing. And I remember texting Sarah and I was like, I don't know, my imposter syndrome is like flaming right now. I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. And then they started to ask for my opinion. They started to value lived experience and say, what do you think of this? Because you have a different perspective, a perspective that we can't have from the position that we're in. And we worked together and it was like magic last year. And I'm super excited to do it again this year, which is kind of weird, the torturous type of process. But that was so valuable to me. And today I get to advocate on the local and state and federal level. We just got back from work with SAMHSA. And it's just incredible seeing Ohio be One Ohio and the recovery community being represented. The power of recovery is beyond transformative. It is magic. And I thank you for that.
And before we go on, I'll just say this. I always marvel that those who formulated the legal document that created One Ohio, let me tell you, it's hard to manage a 29-person board with some of the rules we have. But I wouldn't have it one person shorter than 29. You know, this is wonderful having people from all the state, lived experience, education, a lot of different ideas. And I met Stephanie last week. We were in Bethesda, Maryland for a SAMHSA sponsored event. And again, exchange of ideas from people all over mid-Appalachia, as they called it. But This is thank you so much, China and Stephanie, your not just your presentations, but your devotion to cause. Thank you so much. So with that, I'd like to next turn to Alicia and Sarah, who will talk through the next steps of our grant process.
Well, thank you. And it's hard to follow that act. I think, you know, it's so much to say that I'm like, you don't be making me cry up in here. I'm trying. But, you know, it's so important, the work that we do. And today is important, not only because it's Mental Health Month, not only because it's World Suicide Prevention Day, but today is the day we lay out what we're doing next when it comes to grant funds. And so it's that time again that we will kick off our grant program, and we're going to walk through that program today, and I'm excited to do so. Before I get to the new, I always find it helpful to ground us in what happened last year. Remind us of that history, remind us of where we've been, and then to talk a little bit about where we're going. So I'm just going to flip through a couple slides and talk first about the grant cycle, and then I'll turn it over to Sarah to talk about the new. I was joking with Sarah and said, I'll talk about the old, you can be the new phase. All right. And so if you remember, we're going to go down memory lane. Y'all remember these slides, right? Especially those that are in the board. This was our first grant cycle. And I think it's important, like I said, to remember what we did last time so that you guys can see some of the subtle but intentional changes that we've made to this process in partnership with the grant committee. So last time, if you go back to that 1 through 6, we had a registration period where we first announced it's time to register to be a part of this process that so many took advantage of, which we'll talk about in a minute. We then had folks apply in our grant portal. Our regions did the hard work of reviewing, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment to just emphasize that. Then that work went to the expert panel. And from there, what went from the regions as a recommendation through the expert panel as a recommendation went to our grant oversight committee. And then finally, for the awarding of funds, it went to our board approval. And so those were our 6 steps last time. And I'm going to just spend a couple minutes talking about what that looked like in detail. So from that, we really wanted to focus on regional priorities. It was our first time. We didn't know what we were going to get. We asked regions, hey, tell us if you have priorities. Let's put them here so that we can showcase those priorities to the community. We all had different opinions about that, but that's what's so great about One Ohio. We recognize that each region is different, and we allowed and asked all the regions to kind of give their thoughts here. And so what you see is just a snippet of what was laid out on the websites that regions could go from open to all ideas, right, as Region 1 did, to really picking specific abatement strategies, treatment and healthcare services, intervention and crisis support, prevention, services for impacted children and families. They started to kind of give broad bucket priorities as a part of the last regional grant cycle. And so that was what was built into the RFP. If we go to the next slide, that resulted in, I think, a surprisingly large number. Thank you for all of you who has partnered with us last year in applications. 1,442 applications from 777 organizations across the state. I don't think anyone would have, guessed that number. I think our staff team was somewhere around 600 when we were estimating. But we were so pleased at how, diverse and well represented our community organizations across the state showed up. And then we were able to share that with our regions who were able to sift through many of those and get to some of the results that we saw last year. So if we can go to the next slide. That high volume required a lot of work. And so we had 14 regions that had over 50 applications. 5 regions had over 100. The average range for applications for each region was as low as 26 applications, all the way up to 164 applications per one region. And as you can see from our regional representatives who can attest to this, that review of those applications took some time. The majority of regional reviewers volunteered their time and at least spent 11 minutes per application. And in other circumstances, spent 45 minutes per application. So this is a lot of time intensive work. And we wanted to kind of understand that going into this next round. On the next slide, we also then, after that process, surveyed the regions. You all remember us. We brought a robust survey from the regions to you to just talk about what the regions, felt after they came out of that last regional grant round and what they think that would help them in the future. And so regions said to us they want more data and information specific to their region, more research and evaluation, understanding of what worked, what evidence to work, what needs are in the community, how to set goals and prioritize strategies, and really how to, really counter stigma and think about education. And so you'll see in what we present today, a lot of this is kind of based on that feedback from the regions who are our partners in this. We go to the next slide. What Sarah will present is all of that came together, and we work really closely with our grants oversight committee, which you'll hear from Tom later. Our regions, we had several information sessions. We continue to go to all of our region meetings, particularly Sarah, who has spent a lot of time on the road getting there, to kind of come to where we are today. So I'll turn it over to Sarah to kind of walk through our new process.
Thank you, Alicia. All right, well, I'm going to keep the Recovery Month party going, keep the energy up. So, if you don't know me, Sarah Anstein, Director of Partnership and Outreach here at the Foundation, and I am a woman in long-term recovery, which means I've not used drugs or alcohol since August 16th of 2007. So very excited. I think it's a big deal that you have people in recovery on staff at the One Ohio Recovery Foundation. As people in recovery, that means a lot to us. So I'm very honored to be here and rep my recovery shirt and talk to you about the next grant round. So keep the energy up, the excitement up. It's going to be a really great day. So I'm truly excited about where we are headed. Thank you, Alicia, for grounding us in where we've been. So on the next slide, this is our revised process for Regional Grant Cycle 2. We have listened to the feedback from grant applicants, regional board members, our expert panel, and this board. And based on all of that input, we have streamlined the process for this next grant round. And the goal is really clear. We want to keep the review process moving forward. We want to reduce delays in being able to award, while also minimizing the need to continue going back for additional information. So all of this is to keep the process going forward. So now I'll walk you through each of the updated steps that we have for this grant round. So starting off, applicants will submit a funding inquiry. From there, regions will review that funding inquiry. This will be less than the last application. So we'll talk more about that in future meetings. But funding inquiry, a little more narrow in scope. After the regions review the funding inquiries, they will recommend which ones that they like, and the expert panel will review them. And from there, those will that moved forward will be invited to submit a full application. So we're really trying to be mindful of how much work it takes to put in a grant application. It takes time and resources to do this. So hopefully this is an enhancement to our grant applicants, that those that we want to move forward with are invited to submit that additional work. So after the invited applicants submit, the Grants Oversight Committee will review, and then they'll come to the full board for vote. So we're really excited about this new process. So on the next slide, don't worry, we'll come back to that slide. I got a lot more in here. So the work of this next grant round is already underway, and it begins with the work at our regional boards. So this is our region readiness checklist. So I'll walk through each of these items so that we're all really clear about what's happening right now at our regional level to get ready for this next round. So regions will be using the Regional Board Volunteer Toolkit that we launched earlier this year to do any reorganizing, updating their, governance, their bylaws, making sure they know who's on the regional board, that we filled vacancies, that we know who's going to then be showing up to do the work of reviewing grants. That all is key work that's going to need to happen by the end of September, because we need to know who we're emailing, who we're training on the grant portal, things like that. Next up, the regions will be using our recently launched Regional Priorities Tool and Planning Guide to use data and information about their region to start establishing their funding priorities. So that tool launched at the beginning of August. And so regions have started to use that at their meetings. They'll have until the end of October to do any of that work together as a group. Throughout the whole month of October, regions will complete the annual volunteer commitment form. That will be electronic again, just like last year, where they will disclose conflicts of interest, update their contact information, do all of the attestations that we ask of them. That will be required to participate, just like it was last year. So hence why I need to know who's on the region roster, so I can make sure all the right folks get that. So that will be coming in October. And then regions at their meeting in either October or November, whichever month they're meeting in, we will be coming to them and doing a presentation on grantee data and evaluation. Our grant evaluation team will be traveling with us to the regions to give that presentation. And we're really excited about that because I really think that these early learnings from our current grantees is going to inform and shape what we do with this next round and how the regional grant reviewers look at applications, think about making awards. There's a lot to be learned from what's already happened. And I was really encouraged that the regions were like, we want to hear this before we start the next round. So timing worked out well. We're going to be doing that. And then from there, using the learnings, using the data and information, regions will set their funding priorities that will go directly into the RFP. And that has to be done by the end of November. That's the work happening between now and the end of November at our regions. So on the next slide, I want to walk you through the high level, this One Ohio Abatement Strategy Priorities Tool and Planning Guide, because we're really proud of it. This is, I think just the beginning of what can be done at our regions to support them and understanding local data and information. So the goal of setting funding priorities for this next grant round is to increase the efficiency of the application review process, avoid duplication, and really strengthen the impact of these investments at the regional level. So this planning guide, which is the PDF document on the Region Resources webpage, provides step-by-step instructions for the regions on how to use data, resources, guiding questions, to help them organize their work, engage partners in the community to get feedback, and then ultimately set those funding priorities. And it's divided up into two sections: how to use the tool, which I'll show you in a minute. The tool is actually a downloadable Excel spreadsheet. And then how to navigate kind of this process. Like, what do we do with all this information? You had us bring in speakers, we surveyed the community, we looked at, our chips and chaws, now what? This tool walks you through, or the planning guide walks you through what to do with all of that and how to look for trends across perhaps your multi-county region. So again, if you haven't already, please check that out. We're super proud of it. I think this is just the beginning of what can be done to support our regions in this way. Let me go to the next slide. So this is what the basic version of the tool looks like. As I mentioned, it's a downloadable spreadsheet. So on the Region Resources webpage, you can download an example that's already filled out, and then you can download the blank version. It is optional and it is customizable. And I have to give credit where credit is due. This is based off of something that Region 18 created. So kudos, Region 18, and thank you for letting us borrow what y'all did and make it work for all of One Ohio. So regions will be able to work together to fill this out using that data and information that they were collecting, using the planning guide to guide that work. And so how you would look at this, This one's broken down by just the broad abatement strategy categories. And anything that's in red are the things where we really have an opportunity. There are gaps here, there are lack of resources here. That might be then the areas where you want to focus on in this next round. Whereas the things in green are the things that already have adequate resources, or there's already a lot of dollars going towards it. So it should hopefully visually show where there's some opportunities, maybe some trends across the different counties in a multi-county region that then will help the regional board members feel really confident when they say, these are the funding priorities we want to set because we looked at the data. And so we're really excited about the tool. They get more. The next version looks at subcategories, and then the next one looks at it by population. So we can, go crazy with this, but regions are already starting to use it, and we're very excited about it. So on the next slide, so using all of this, the goal is that regions, if they so choose, could narrow their funding priorities for this next round. Because as Alicia pointed out, in the last round, it was just the big broad abatement strategy buckets. We got a lot of applications, and in some cases, they didn't meet the needs of the region. So we're going to better be able to communicate to the applicants what we're really looking for in each region, which I think from what I've been hearing from grant applicants, they will appreciate. Like, am I a good fit for this? And do I provide services that you're actually looking for in this region based on the needs that you have identified? So this is a draft example. I made it up. It's region 20. It's my region. And this is what it could look like, okay, in the RFP if a region chose to get a little more specific and really communicate what they need. So more to come on how this might look as we kind of dive into this at the regional level, but just wanted to give you a flavor of what it might look like and how we're getting a little more sophisticated in some of our grant making and how we're then communicating that back out with the communities. So on the next slide, not only are regions engaging with data and information, but they're engaging with their communities. So I've got, some little screenshots. A number of them are conducting community feedback surveys. So they're not just, talking amongst themselves and looking at reports. They're inviting the community. They're listening. And we really commend the regions for doing that. And they're in the region planning guide includes a template survey. So if your region isn't doing one and you want to, we can help you do that. So on the next slide, I told you we'd revisit the process slide. So I kind of walked you through how we're going to get here, right? We're doing the funding inquiries. Regions will review, let us know who they want to invite to submit. So going on to that next slide, here's what we're doing for the grant applicants to get them ready to roll. So we know what we're doing for the regions. So we're expanding resources for the grant applicants this time. All of our past Impact Academies are up on the website. If you have not watched our grant writing workshop and some of our previous Impact Academies on the different abatement strategies, would really encourage you to do that. That's where you'll get a lot of great learnings of things about the evidence. So those are all posted. And then new this year, coming soon, save the date, we're going to be doing an Impact Academy on grant implementation readiness. So before you even get jazzed about writing a grant, is your organization ready to actually implement what you just wrote this grant for? Do you have buy-in? Do you have a sustainability plan? Are you actually ready? So we're really excited about that. So we're going to be pouring into our grant applicants this round as well. And this is just the start, expect a training from us on the RFP, the request for proposal, to help our applicants really know if this is a good fit, as well as a very comprehensive evidence guide, which I'm very excited about. Expert panel is doing a phenomenal job there. So we're, really thinking about capacity building across the regions and our applicants. Okay, we're getting there, what you've all been waiting for. So I told you the timeline for the regions. As a reminder, regions have until the end of November to submit their funding priorities to the foundation, which takes us to Drum roll, please. Go to the next slide. December, which is when we will be launching the request for proposal, the RFP. So that will go live in December. Then in January, the funding inquiry will open. And then reviews of the funding inquiries will begin in February. So we're really excited to announce the timeline, what's right around the horizon for all of us, and to begin continuing to support our regional board members and all of our grant applicants. So on the next slide, right now you can go on our website. We have updated our grants page. The Regional Grant Cycle 2 headquarters is live. This is going to be the central hub where we will be updating it with additional information, specifics, all of these resources that we've mentioned that are in the works. This is where they will all live. So this is where you want to be directing folks to, grant applicants on the line. This is where you're going to want to start checking out. So lots more will be coming in the coming months that we are very excited about. So that concludes my part. Yeah, we'll take questions.
Sarah, good job. Alicia, congratulations to you and your team. This is the biggest lift that Ohio has, and you guys did a great job with it. So Sarah, I do have a question for you. What did we learn from the last grant cycle that other regions can use, peer regions like what you mentioned with Tom's region, that could be used across the entire board, not board, but across all of the
Yeah.
applicants and regions?
Yeah, thank you, Larry. That's a great question. There were a lot of learnings across the different regions, especially, some comparisons we could draw too between multi-county and single county. And we captured a lot of that in the regional volunteer guide that we put on the website. So it includes a number of best practices and suggestions. But there's, in a lot of ways, no wrong ways to do certain things. So there's differences in how they do their grant review process. And so I've been encouraging the regions to use that document to reflect on what they did last time to see if there's any changes they want to make next time. So we've got a lot captured in there that we've been walking through each region with.
Can you go back a couple slides, the one that has this one? I want to make sure I understand the terminology. Funding inquiry is comparable to like an LOI, would you say? The letter of intent?
Yes, a little more than that, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when we say it opens, does that mean that's when it's due, or?
That's when you could get into our grant portal and begin filling it out.
And so the review begins in February. Are we still doing the rolling deadline like before, or the rolling application like before, or will there be a firm deadline?
There will be firm deadlines.
Okay.
Yes. And we are going to do rolling by region. So that I think will be an improvement from last time where it was rolling by application. So we'll move each region at a time. So when a region moves to then that next stage, we can communicate. And so at the end of the line, when the board votes and they vote on picking on my region, region 20, we can then tell everyone in region 20, here's everything for region 20. So rolling by region is a new thing for this year.
And then one more question about the Impact Academy. The way you described it, would you say it's more for people who aren't, maybe more grassroots organizations who haven't pursued grants when you talk about sustainability and all that, or would you recommend it for any potential grantee?
I would recommend the Impact Academy on grant implementation readiness for everyone, because it does also touch on fidelity and how we're going to monitor some of these things. So whether you're a new grassroots organization or a really large one that's been around a while, there's implementation challenges that vary from both of them. So I would encourage everyone, whether you're a grant applicant, grantee, or, just curious to join us for that.
Thank you.
And I know Denise on the line has a question.
Yes, thank you. I want to, it's really kind of a follow-up to Don's question, actually, by way of this new efficiency, and I applaud the group for trying to make this process a little more efficient. Obviously, there were learnings from the first round, but as you, if I'm an agency that wants to apply for funding, and there's this like first round where you figure out whether or not someone should proceed to the next step. Can you help me better understand what that is? Is that a matter of aligning with the region's priorities, or is there something else that's being captured there?
Yes, that's a great question. So the regions will review all the funding inquiries that come in for them, and then they will recommend those that they want to invite to do the full application. So for then those that don't move forward, we'll be able to let them know you weren't moving forward. Thank you so much. And then those that are invited will then get access to the full application to submit. So it's an efficiency there where we're better able to for the grant applicants kind of know whether this is a good fit, because as we mentioned, it's a lot of work writing these things.
So is that application, then the first application truncated? Is it just a shorter version of information that you would require in the second application?
It is shorter, but it is still got some, pages to it.
Okay.
And it is informed by what the region said was really useful to them last time, as well as some of the things that we learned. It's better to know early on rather than at the end, kind of now needing to go backwards. So it's been informed by all of those learnings.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did Jim, you have something?
Sorry, that was a stretch.
Okay. Mircha and then Scott, or got the Mircha, y'all can.
The rolling schedule. Assume by region, let's just hypothetically, region 1 starts January 1 or the inquiry letter. Will there be like a daily, a weekly schedule of when the next regions can come in, or how will that kind of work? Because we'll be telling our communities, hey, January, we'll start the inquiry process. But if we're like region 20 and not scheduled for 30 days later to start the inquiry, we need to be able to know that.
So everyone will start, we go back to the timeline slide, everyone starts the same time. But if a region is very quick in their review process and gets done sooner, we'll then move all of theirs to the next stage. So we'll be, Yep, but the region moves together, everyone starts at the same time.
And so the application process is the same for the whole state. It's really the review process that is dependent on regions. So some regions, like we had last time, got 194 applications. Some regions got 26. As regions are done with their review, that's where we'll start the rolling process for regions to get that information back to us. We get it to the expert panel, grants committee, then board. So that's the rolling part of it.
In a follow-up question, if I may, within that inquiry process, is there a feedback loop from the region review to the applicant that submitted the original inquiry?
What would the feed like of, hey, we're not moving forward with you, or?
I have a question about your letter.
Yeah, so a lesson learned from last time was that there was so much needing to go back for follow-up. So what I would be recommending this time is that we don't go back and ask follow-ups. Folks need to give their best work, answer the question, and if there's not enough information in it, can't evaluate. So that took up a lot of time going backwards.
Is that what you're saying? Oh, no, that's, Okay, yeah, all that's right. what I'm saying.
I have two questions. One is, I see the funding inquiry that is being reviewed by the region. And then later on the timeline, I see a full application. I'm assuming the full application has more meat to the bone. And I'm assuming that the regions and the expert panel, they don't see that anymore, correct? They just see the smaller version. And then the full application is just being reviewed by the grant oversight committee. Is that correct?
That's how the process is laid out now. And a lot of what's in the full application is technical stuff that's really kind of more for staff work. So if you remember last time, we not only had the registration, the application, but we also then had to do a verification form with everyone. And so we kind of took some of that stuff that was in the verification form and put it in the application. So an example is, you know, if a region awards a partial award, that's where you would update that information in the full application. Saves us some time, and we can move quicker.
Okay, and thank you. And my second question will be, I believe you stated that by the end of November, you want every region to identify their priorities. Based on that, Excel spreadsheet was an example that maybe the regions can all use. How would you recommend that counties within a region or regions collect that, come up with the priorities, correct? I mean, do you recommend that we use an existing community health assessment process? Or do you recommend that we try to do another new community survey? Or how would you recommend that?
Yeah, there's a lot of options. And hopefully we can talk about it at the next Region 17 meeting. Because in the planning guide walks you through a variety of different county specific data sets. I know you probably have a great report of what's going on in your counties, our health departments do. So there's a number of options we have where we can pull. I know some regions are inviting in their Adams Board directors and health department directors to present. Some folks are doing the survey. Some regions kind of broke up some of the data sets into small groups and then looked at that, and they're kind of giving little report outs. Here's what's going on with overdose death rates. Here's what's going on with substance use rates in our community. So there's a lot of options, and I think we'll figure out in each region what makes the most sense and what assets you have on that regional board that we can tap.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've had a great round of questions. Before we move on, I gotta tell you, when she put Region 20 up there, now I love Halloween. And I love April Fool's joke. But I had a mini panic attack. Because I thought I've been giving all these speeches about 19 regions. So anyway, thanks for clarifying. So now we'll move to our committee reports, and the first one off the bat is Evan stepped out, so bring in the backup quarterback. I'll do the executive committee report real quick, and then we'll probably move on to investment. So Jim, you might want to get ready. You might be the next batter up. I know I'm mixing sports there, but so the executive committee in August was joined by Jim White with an update from the investment committee, and we were asked to approve the timely update to our investment committee policy in light of recommendations from our short-term investment partner, PNC. The committee voted to approve the investment committee's recommended change to ensure the PNC investment accounts could be created appropriately. So today we'd like to review that policy. In doing so, I'm going to turn the floor over to Jim White. Thank you, Jim, and this is the investment committee report.
Okay, great. Thanks, Don. With respect to the investment policy, really just some simple changes. We went through an RFP process several months ago, submitted that to I think 10 to 12 potential suspects. And we selected PNC, and part of their mandate was to update our investment policy just with respect to how we're actually managing kind of our cash. We've got a lot of cash, roughly $350 million, which is a key bank. It's been for the last several years in an insured deposit program at Key. And I think we're bringing a little kind of a level of sophistication and professionalization to how we're managing our cash today. PNC's done a really nice job on helping us kind of update our investment policy to include being a little bit more diversified in some of the different instruments that we can use as it relates to kind of managing our cash. So we had a big meeting with PNC probably 3 weeks ago, kind of an on-site meeting, talked about what the strategy is going to be. I think we're in the process of opening accounts and accounts, and I would think that we would be going live with them within the next week or so. So that's kind of that part of it. Don, do you want me to finish kind of the update? The second real, I guess, thing that we're working on right now is we, just as we kind of embarked upon an RFP process for kind of our cash management solution, we're now at the point, I think, where we've developed an RFP, and I'll give David Kaplan, I see David over there, has really helped, as well as Jim Quinn, on developing an RFP for really an investment advisor to help us with kind of thinking through kind of the long-term aspects of the assets we have. I think we all agree, and we're kind of getting closer that, we can't just continue to kind of manage cash in a capital preservation strategy for, the term of this fund. So, we're very close to sending this RFP out. We're actually collecting names, within the last, I asked the investment committee to submit to me by last week, which I have from Jim Quinn, potential list of investment advisors who they've used in the past, or they've had recommendations. So we're compiling that list, and we will probably get that RFP sent out within the next, I would say within the next couple of weeks, quite honestly. Hopefully get responses back by the end of October, and plan to have really an investment advisor, a consultant in place by hopefully January to really help us through, what we're going to do with respect to kind of allocating, longer term assets. That would also include updating the investment policy again, because right now our investment policy does not allow us to invest in really kind of, when I say risky assets, I'm talking more about equities, right? The investment policy today is just strictly a cash management policy that allows us to invest in treasuries and corporate bonds and very kind of riskless kind of capital preservation strategies. But as we move forward with a new investment advisor, we will expand that investment policy statement to include, other asset classes. It will also include a lot of modeling, a lot of work, and I know a lot of people, want this in terms of, what is our spending policy going to look like going forward from a grant perspective. So that's kind of the next iteration of what we're trying to do from an investment committee standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Jim? And I would remind everybody, if you want to serve on any committee, just let us know, Alicia or me. The boards are comprised entirely of volunteers, but then if you do volunteer, we of course ask for attendance because that does affect our quorum. So thank you so much, Jim. And I don't know that, is Evan back in the room yet?
I can do it.
Okay, go ahead, Amy. And this will be the Audit and Finance Committee report.
Yes, Evan had to step out, so I will present on his behalf. We shared the financial statements as informational today, since there wasn't quorum, so we will need, the motion and the approval as we always get. But just a few high points, and see if you have any questions. Overall thematic, nothing really out of the ordinary, but a few highlights for you. The July personnel expenses are higher due to having 3 payrolls in the month of July, so due to the calendar. You'll also see on here, the insurance has been adjusted to recognize monthly expenses rather than annual. So you'll see that looks slightly different than it has in the past. And then the implementation cost associated with giving data were incurred in July. So that's under the grant support system. That's the expense there that you see. So any questions on the operations budget? If not, I can move to the next budget report. Okay, next slide, Lori. And then the cash balance report, just 2 highlights here, actually 3 highlights here I want to call out for you. In the Bank B, while it is the overall total, just wanted to call out the nuance of the conversation we had going over the 265 million of the ICS cap at KeyBank. So the additional brokerage account was opened and that 27 million was transferred into that account. So that is reflected in that Bank B balance. The additional grant cycle number 2 was added to the cash balance schedule in July. So if you look there, approved grant cycle number 2, the 40 million, that is the allocation that you all approved at the June meeting. And then just the last call out,
as we continue to have conversations about short-term and long-term. Just wanted to call out the change in the unallocated interest of the almost 870,000 for the balance of 15 million. And then the last budget schedule, the regional grant budget for cycle number 1. Again, not a lot of change here, but again, as a reminder, as expected, our grantees are on schedules. And so for the most part, with the exception of some schools who have asked specifically to start in July or August, we weren't anticipating that we would be making a lot of payments in July. So while there's not a lot of payments reflected on here, again, in line with the theme, not unexpected, not unanticipated. So those are the July financial statements for your approval, and welcome any questions before you do that for approval.
And we will need a motion to approve the July financials as recommended by the attending members of the Audit and Finance Committee. Is there a motion by Tom? Second. Will, any discussion on those or any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you so much. So then we move on to the next grant report. I'm looking for Tom Gregoire. There you are. With the Grants Committee. Grant over.
Recovery Month, everybody. It's a good day to be in recovery, and as we've heard from some of our colleagues, I'm also a person in long-term recovery, which means for me, I've not used a drug or alcohol since January 4th, 1979. Directly related why I'm sitting here. But in any event, let me give you, we've talked a lot about the grant committee. I want to thank our folks on the grant committee. We've worked hard. We've traveled in for a 5-hour meeting earlier in the month and had a great lunch, but no dessert.
That down.
You can't be great at everything, Tom.
Anyway, just want to give you a summary of what we are working on as we prepare for the next round of funding. We've learned a lot of lessons. We've learned lessons from listening to regions, from our own experience, from the feedback from the expert panel, and from benchmarking. The staff's done a lot of benchmarking with other foundations, both in Ohio and across the country. These are foundations that are specific to opioids and with other purposes. So all of our conversations are sort of informed by that. We began conversations in this August meeting on a number of topics, which I'll cover for you briefly here, that are just things we learned along the way. We don't have decisions on those yet. That's what our September meeting's for, but just the topics we've been kicking around. Project length, should we awarded 12, 24, 36. I think one of the things we're learning is that a 12-month project is too short. That halfway through the period, people are just getting ramped up. So we're likely to take a look at that. The start date, we've already heard we've heard about a fixed start date that will that is common among funders. We made awards in our first round between $4,000 and $1.8 million, and somewhere in the middle is probably a nice cap that can help with planning. We will work on that. Many of the things we funded were infrastructure. Where's China? We got you a car, and a lot of other things like that. And those are important. We put a lot of money into recovery homes, as I recall. We want to establish some clear requirements. I mean, what shape do you need to be in terms of ownership, control, readiness to spend the money that and sustainability around that. So we're working on that. Having conversations about eligibility, government eligibility, for profit eligibility. We haven't made a decision, particularly with the government. We would likely suggest that there be a matching if a government entity, but that we haven't figured that out yet. Licensure, certification, and accreditation. The staff did a lot of time last time trying to figure out does this entity meet the requirement of the state or other licensure body, federal, state, or local? Is it in line with, requirements for certification or licensure? So we imagine having a clear, requirement for whatever that might be, and the staff is kind of unpacking. There are many, from prevention to long-term recovery, there are very different requirements, so we're looking at that. In the spirit of maximizing our resources, we anticipate suggesting that if a service could be reimbursed by somebody else, it should be reimbursed by somebody else. We don't want to use our resources. That's kind of contradicts our guideline in the OU around supplanting funds anyway, but that's the kind of thing we're going to talk about. And we're also talking about partial awards. We saw a lot of, people asked for 10 and they got 5, and it wasn't always one. It took a lot of work on the behalf of the staff and the organizations to, all right, what could I do? Can I have the impact with 5? Is 5 still a good investment on our part? So we want to contemplate the implications of approving what's asked for, the full amount, or not approving it. There are a lot of things to think through around that. So no decisions on any of those things. Those are forthcoming, and again, they're based feedback from the regions, our own experience, and what other funders are doing. And I will entertain from board questions and from the staff corrections. So
And we just realized that your microphone was not on.
you gotta say all that again.
But we.
Sorry.
But you said a lot there, so, I think we heard you, I know your mic's not on either. My mic's not on either. We somewhat heard, so.
I'm sorry.
For the folks online, Alicia, Bruce, can you hear us okay? Did you hear Tom when he was reporting?
I could hear Tom.
Oh, perfect, thank you, so you're good.
Won't make you do it again.
When you talk about governmental entity, are you talking about hospitals?
I don't think we've unpacked it all the way down there, but no, I don't think we were talking about hospitals per se, but that's the kind of unpacking we still need to
We
do.
may want to exclude that because oftentimes they have foundations, and I think need to make sure that
Well, that's
part of that also.
And I'm reminded by the staff that we did talk about that from a concept of fund, other, people have the capacity to, they're also funding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we have included that. I hadn't thought about it in this hospitals, but yeah. Are there other questions? All right, I'm still not going to turn the mic on then. Thank you very much. And thanks again to hey, if you're a grant committee person, would you stick your hand up, please? Thank you. The staff had us so incredibly prepared for the work. If you're gonna ask a bunch of busy people to give you 5 hours, you better be ready. And you were exceptionally ready and well prepared. I mean, it was a really positive conversation that we had in our last meeting. So thank you to the staff too.
What happened with dessert?
I don't know. They were so busy getting us ready, they forgot to cook.
candy.
Yeah, we brought in the candy bath box.
I couldn't have any. I was studying for my cholesterol test. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. And are there any new business or announcements? We've already covered our agenda. Now, our next meeting of the board is October 8th. I would like to have a motion then to adjourn.
Could I say
Go
one
ahead, Ted.
real quick? Just because of the moment, it is Recovery Month. We had 2 speakers here today, and Stephanie Robinson and China Darrington. And I got to include Sarah Anstein in this. 3 of we don't have leaders like this in our community at this level. What they're doing, I admire and respect what you guys are doing, and I just felt so proud to be here today. So thank you for that.
Again, and thank you to Stephanie and China. So is that a motion to adjourn then, Ted? Sometimes as chair, you gotta read it. And then Dawn moved her hand up. All in favor saying adjourning, say aye. Opposed, the motion carries. So that concludes the formal agenda. We'll take about a 5-minute recess to reconvene for those who are staying for lunch.